So today we're going to build a knife kit. Bought this one at Rockler Woodworking. They're pretty cool. I've done a few of them. They're not the hardest thing in the world, but for a beginner, there's something cool to get their hands on. First, you're going to want to pick your wood for your scales, unless you purchase scales for the kit itself. Here I have a piece of Paduke I had laying around. It's got some cool sapwood on it, so I chose to go with that. You're going to want to lay that out, measure it. It doesn't have to be exact, get a rough measurement for it. Mark it out on your piece, head over to the table saw, give her a cut. This is about 2 inches wide here, about 6 inches long. You're going to want to rip it in half on your bandsaw. I would suggest a little bit bigger blade than what I'm using here. You can see it drifts on me, so I have to go and do some sanding. Now, when this happens to me, this is how I run my scales through the drum sander. Use double-sided tape. I tape them on a flat piece of wood, and then I run them through until they're both consistent and the same width. Now, is this necessary? No, but it takes away a lot of work in the back end where you have to try and shape both pieces, especially if one is a different width. Now here you can see I'm marking with chalk. I run them through. That gives me a guide for how much has come off each time. And then once both of them have no chalk on them, I know that they're the same width. Then I go ahead and do a rough outline of the handle itself on the scale. It's important to make sure you do the outline on the part of the scale that will be touching the handle itself, not the outside. You can see I flip down the scale and I then go ahead and put some double-sided tape on them, making sure I keep that orientation proper. This is going to give you the pattern on the outside of the knife that you want, and it's important to get that done now. After that, I go ahead and I tape the knife itself to the scale. That way I can hold it in place. You can use hot glue here. You can use CA glue. You can use whatever. For me, I had tape. Tape was the easiest, so I went ahead and did that. Take the whole assembly over to your drill press now. You're going to put it in a vise, stabilize it, and then go ahead and use the proper bit to drill through the wood. It shouldn't be drilling into the metal at all. It should go the whole way through. The orientation should be good because you set that up already. And then after this, you're going to want to pop the knife off and head over to your bandsaw. At the bandsaw, you want to trim off all the excess around the markings you put on the scales earlier. This is going to save you a ton of time when you go over to your sander and get that all shaped down to where you want it before you go ahead and do your final shaping. You can go ahead and unstick your scales now. Make sure you keep the orientation the right way as you go to glue on the knife itself. Now I'm using a 2-part epoxy. It's a quick setting epoxy. You don't need anything too ridiculous here. Go ahead and make sure you mix it up real good. I do it for about 45 seconds and then brush it on the scales. I'm going to scuff up the knife itself a little bit. As you see, I just did there with some sandpaper. And then go ahead and lay out your scales onto the knife. I use the pins that they give you in the kit to make sure my alignment's there, and then you can see I probably have 7 or 8 hand clamps to make sure that that bad boy is held in place. In the step before this, you want to make sure you pull those pins out after you get all the clamps on, and then here I'm using some CA glue to set the pins themselves. CA glue holds fine. You don't need to use epoxy, but you can if you want to wait another 15-20 minutes for that to harden. Here you can see I'm cutting the pins, the excess off on the bandsaw. They're super soft, so you can go ahead and use whatever blade you got in there, and they come right off. From here, you're going to want to go to your sander. I have an oscillating spindle sander with a belt on it. But for a long time I did use my belt sander in a vise. Got the same result, so you can go ahead and do that if you don't have this option. I would highly recommend investing in one of these. I have a rigid and it's a fantastic tool. From here I go to the smaller attachment and get tighter on the insides of the handle. Just take your time. You want to work as close as you possibly can to the knife blank. You'll start to see it come and pop through. It gets shiny and you can see the metal itself. Here I'm flattening the faces on both sides. Now you're on the shaping. I lock the blade in a vise and then start out with my grinder and a flap disc sander. I got a 60 grit flap disc on here. This is an easy way to knock off a lot of material and shape the piece roughly while it's being held securely in this fixed position. I'm going to then flip this over and go ahead and start to get the inside shaping done as well. Once I'm happy with the rough shape of the knife handle, I'm moving on to using the hand sanding method. Now these are strips of 80 grit that I cut off of my drums when I'm done using them, and then I go ahead and use them for stupid little stuff like this. It's an easy way to save a couple bucks from going and buying sheets now. I get as close as I can on inside and outside of this and start smoothing this bad boy out to the best of my ability. And then I work my way down the grits. You'll see here that I'll go to 120 after 80, and then 220, and then 320. Now keep in mind that going with the grain is going to be the best bet for getting the best sheen, the best finish on this. So you want to make sure when you get up higher in the grits that you're doing that. Here you can see I'm working some 320. Now this is almost a little bit overkill, but I like to do it anyway. Helps polish up the metal after you hit it with the sander too. Go ahead and use some steel wool here too if you think you want to go even higher on the grit. Here all I'm doing is wiping down the finished handle with some mineral spirits. It's going to take the excess dust left on it off of it, and then it's going to leave you a nice clean surface to go buff with. I take it over to the buffing wheel after this with some paste wax. Mine's on my drill press, and I go ahead and buff it out until I like the way it looks. And here's the finished piece. You can see the sapwood really has some great contrast in that handle. I absolutely love it. I think it turned out great. Thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe and leave any comments you have down below.